This is. Very cool.
I went out, picked up my lunch, and it was like raining. I feel like it was gonna start snowing any second. I'm like, oh my God, this weather. I love winter. Well, my summer it was like 72 one night. It's so nice.
I'm born and raised.
Oh,
Yeah.
no wind.
So I was born in St. Joe, but my parents moved up north to California. Oh. So that's where I grew up. And went to school at college.
Yeah, no, I'm in my coast,
The back then it was like
to my
State University.
and you don't sweat, you know it's cold.
In a small town between Big Rapids and Mount Pleasant.
Where's that?
Remus.
I know.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. Sister and brother-in-law
I
went
don't have to worry about
their state.
Okay.
doors locked. One of the doors starts.
Most of my family went.
Yes, I'm not aware of it.
State games. My uncle's side of the family went to U of M. They were hot hair. So they're, nose and ear.
Right,
No, they're that side of the.
Okay,
So.
Yes, I guess. So, yeah, we can start. And
Yep, I love Sioux State Brand.
please correct me, I'm not Robert's rule of. So thanks everyone for coming to the audit committee meeting today. I guess we'll start off with introduction. So I'll start with the folks in the room. You go up over there and. No, introductions.
I'm sorry.
No worries. Hi.
Robert Tintle, Chief Financial Officer.
Susan DeJody, HR Director.
I'm Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator, Risk Manager, and Interim Fair and Expo Director. Steve Dennison, County Clerk.
Phil Anderson, public member.
Kristen Tony, Public Member.
Patty Heritage County Commissioner.
Joe Healy, Public Member.
Elizabeth Pete, staff.
Nick Leland, County Administrator and ex officio member. Lee Randall, Facilities Director and County Management member.
Liz Foote, Public Member.
Angie Powers, Admin Assistant.
And then the folks, whoever is online.
Thank you, Mayor.
Bobby Laurel County Clerk.
Good afternoon, Dan Forrester, Washington County Elections Division Manager.
Kate Zimke, Jefferson County.
Marcy Ritchie, Lynn County Clerk.
Jackson County.
Brenda Potter, Wheeler
County Clerk.
Brenda Potter, Wheeler County Clerk.
Rebecca Baker, Lane County Elections Manager.
Anyone else?
Rochelle Long, Klamath County Clerk and OACC President. Hi, Lennon Ingalls, Josephine County Clerk.
My name is Gabrielle Puccia. I'm going to turn on my video really fast. I am about to be with Benton County starting on Monday and in the auditor's office, and I'm excited to be here today.
Welcome.
Thank you.
That it? You have a full house in that. Okay, and then next is to review the minutes from the August 8th meeting. Motion to approve before I do any comments, I guess.
I'll motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any comments, corrections? I guess all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So going into the internal audit reports, the election audit report and presentation.
So our first presentation is on the election audit. So this was the audit that we just put out on the May 2025 election. We'll start with just some background information. So this is the calendar for the May 2025 election. Just so that you know that there's a lot more than just election day that goes into the process. So the first day for candidate filing for this election was on February 8th. Election day was on May 20th, and the results of the election were certified on June 11th. This is a document that the clerk's office puts out describing all the steps in the process. So I think there are 12 steps to putting on the election, starting with voter registration, making sure all the equipment is working, mailing and printing out the ballots, collecting the ballots, verifying the signatures of the ballots, processing the ballots, scanning and tabulating the ballots, then interpreting results. In some cases, the results aren't clear and the machine can't tabulate them. Reporting unofficial results as votes come in, and then finally official results, and then some audits that they do internally, reconciling numbers at different stages of the process, and then finally storing all those paper ballots for 2 years. So the audit objective was to determine whether the county's election system was secure, accessible, and accurate. That's a pretty big objective, so we can focused in on some sub-objectives, including whether information security controls were adequate to prevent tampering, whether voting was accessible to people with physical disabilities or language barriers, whether the processes in place to identify ineligible voters were effective, whether the signature verification process correctly identified invalid signatures, and whether the ballot inspection process correctly identified which ballots should be counted, enhanced, or reproduced, or rejected. And they're not really enhanced or reproduced anymore because it's all electronic now, but really that was focusing on how votes that weren't necessarily clear enough to be interpreted by the machine were tallied by staff. So our field work consisted of doing our cybersecurity checklist, observations of the election process, and doing document and data analysis of records that came out of the process. The cybersecurity checklist was a checklist that we pretty much standardly use across our integrated audits, mostly looking at user and access controls. And as we'll get to, we had a scope impairment, so we weren't able to carry out that work. So that's the first thing I will talk about is scope impairment. So the first thing to note is that we weren't able to draw conclusions related to information security. We categorize our findings by these elements of effect, criteria, condition, and cause. The effect was that technology is an integral component of modern elections, and its reliability is a major concern. We were using checklists that we put together based on National Institute of Security and Technology standards. The clerk denied us access to procedures related to the clear ballot system and refused to discuss information security. So therefore, we could not assess either condition or cause. And so we don't have any recommendations in that area. For findings and recommendations, we had one finding, which was that the ballot drop boxes were not fully accessible. We used a checklist that's put together based on whether people who need accommodations are able to access depositories. And in this case, we were looking really, most of the criteria was met, including like slopes and access points. But two things that we found was that some of the boxes were higher than are able to be used by people in wheelchairs. So the standard for that is that deposit boxes should not be higher than 48 inches. And then we found a few that were higher than 48 inches. And also that the pavement should be free of gaps so that it's easy to walk along. And we found gaps in pavement that were greater than a half. And then finally, this was one where you weren't able to use this box as a drive-through because a gate had been placed in front of it.
148 inches.
A lot were not much, so 49. I think there was one might have been in the 50s. So our recommendation there is to inspect drop boxes on a regular basis, using standards for accessible design, and then to create a plan for improving any boxes that don't meet standards. We also had a lot of observations. So we use observations when we don't have all of the elements of a finding. In this case, in some cases, we use observations when we have what would be positive findings.
Excuse me, Elizabeth, on page 12 of 25 in that report, it does say the height of all of them.
Yeah.
And so the one is 54 inches, the road department. Better take a few inches down.
Yeah. So these observations are mostly positive. The first one is that we checked the voter rolls and we confirmed that they were appropriate. So we did two tests of the voter rolls. One is looking at how many people were registered at households. We were looking for discrepancies that would indicate there were people had been registered to vote at a household and then forgot to register, or there was an unreasonable number of people registered at a household, at a single family house to vote. There were very few, I think maybe no more than a couple dozen, where there were more than 4 people registered to vote at any single household, and even fewer than that where more than 4 people actually voted. So we felt comfortable concluding that the people who were registered at these households were appropriately registered. The other thing we did was to look at deceased records from the Oregon Health Authority and compare those to the voter rolls to see if any people who appeared on the list of deceased persons was still registered to vote, and we didn't see any of those, so we thought that was good. Another thing we looked at was the signature verification process. This is something I found really interesting, and I didn't know a lot about before I started looking into this, but they actually do check every signature on every ballot against the voter registration records. And any signatures that don't match, they will send a note to that voter asking them to come in and submit a new signature, which they will then check to see if it matches the one on the ballot. If it matches the one on the ballot, then that ballot is counted. And then if it doesn't match, I think it's not, would it not be counted in the case?
It doesn't, I'm sorry,
If the one they brought in, their signature with their updated.
it still would not be counted.
Often does that happen?
Registration would not be inactivated.
Just curious.
We get a handful.
So you look at physically, somebody puts eyes on each signature.
Each signature. With the first time through when they submit their ballot, and then if they had forgotten to sign their ballot return envelope, or if their signature didn't match, we will check it on that cure as well. So
I just know my signature varies.
Yeah, and so here are some examples of some people whose signatures have probably very legitimately varied over time, and so these are people that they would have sent a notice to and asked them to come in and submit a signature. So that process was working. And then the final process is how our staff interpreting voter intent. And so in most cases, the vote by mail manual or the voters pamphlet instructs all people to completely fill in their circles when they're casting votes. Not everyone does that. And so these are some examples of votes that might be ambiguous. So one you can see has a no vote. The first one on the upper left has been erased. You can kind of see that, but that the staff would have interpreted that one as a yes. But the one just below it, it's a little bit lighter, but that doesn't look intentionally erased. So that would be counted as an overvote with no vote cast. The one on the upper right, this is how the voters pamphlet actually instructs you. If you make a mistake, you should cross out your wrong one. So that's one though that staff would also be taking a look at. And then this one just below it, the machine would have read that as no vote cast because neither of the circles were filled in, but you can see that take a broader look that they meant to select no. So we looked at some of these where there was some discrepancy, or not discrepancy, but some the machine had pointed out like I'm not quite sure, I'm not as sure of these as others. Looked at all those and thought that staff made the right choice in how they selected those votes.
Steve, I have a quick question, just out of curiosity. Yeah, you can go back there. Is there a, when people are doing this examining, right, these, is there a standard that, like a state standard or national standard that, yes, this counts or no, it doesn't? I'm just curious.
Sure, yeah, the examples that I believe Elizabeth is citing come from the Oregon vote by mail manual.
Okay.
And there are examples of voter intent there.
Okay, cool. So everybody knows what's good and what's.
Those consistently.
Okay, awesome.
And they do it in pairs and mostly staff. I think all staff, everyone who does this is a county employee. They do it in pairs though, and no two people who are registered to the same party can do the work. So it's always at least two, a Democrat or Republican or independent working on this together. And then the final thing we looked at was accommodations, both for language access and for helping people with disabilities to vote. We heard from both people in the disabilities community and people, the Latino community, that they wished there was more outreach related to these issues. So there was a lot of effort or a lot of accommodations available to people who needed accommodations for voting, but not much advertisement of those. So if people came in and asked, they would be made aware of it and offered it. But other than the voters pamphlet, there wasn't really much information about where you could find that. Kind of similarly for translation. So this is voters pamphlet that's translated by the state into Spanish and a few other languages. But there's not a whole lot of, those things are offered, but there's not a whole lot of advertisement about them. So just noted in the observation section that they're doing a good job of offering accommodations, but the outreach could be improved.
Who's responsible for, so like if that wanted to be or needed to be advertised, I'm guessing that's maybe a recommendation made more advertising to let people know who's responsible. Is that a county thing or is that like the state?
The clerk is responsible for voter education, so and telling people how to vote.
So that's funded by the county. If we wanted to do more advertising or put something out there, the county funds that.
The county would need to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's it. So then we have questions and comments, and also if you all could complete the survey.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Yes.
It's Daryl. Just a question or thought. I know the local television station, and I know there's a lot of like interaction and stuff you see from the county and the city of Bend. Could you run like a PSA, or I guess this would be for Steve, could you do like a PSA through the KTVZ about the accommodations for disabled folks and just maybe do some education that way or some outreach that way. I know that would be in English, it wouldn't be in Spanish, but I think they do have Spanish simulcast if Spanish speakers were listening to it that way. Just a thought or possibility.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's, of course, that's a possibility. We could always do more. I'll say
Yeah,
that we,
sure.
you know, we are meeting requirements. We're following the law. So there's that as a baseline. You can always do more. It's try to be
Yeah, it's
as
just a
clear as
thought. I
possible.
mean, just
Materials, but
You
yeah.
guys put stuff up in the, and this tells you that I don't go to the post office very often anymore. But is there like stuff at the post office that we can put? I know this sounds so old fashioned, but flyers or posters or something.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, no, I'm just
Again,
brainstorming, right? If this is maybe something we want to pursue, or just if we're getting comments that they wish that there was more education about it, then.
and it also comes down to resources as well.
Yeah.
You know, we are a very small department
Yep, got it.
in the big scheme of things, and even across the state, there are of course smaller counties with less resources. But I think I saw a reference in the report to what Multnomah County does. We are not like Multnomah.
Right.
We don't have the same funding as Multnomah, and in fact, I think their outreach, some of their funding might even be be cut and decreased.
Yeah.
So yeah, outreach could always be improved. Some of that costs money, but
No,
yeah,
I get it,
I'm
but
all ears for
yeah, and with you being a small department, I understand that, but you're probably one of the most important when you think about transparency for the citizens, the importance of it, right? And I don't know if there's a way to, Patty, if there's a way that we can give them a little more money, just even to make posters.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, how much would
and
that
I bet
cost?
Steve has got a bunch of, I bet Steve's got some ideas about that too.
And you asked for a little more money. Patty, if we're asking.
Little more money.
Fine little.
Yeah,
What is just the website?
Yeah, we can improve, you know, and we may have, I'd have to double check and make sure that we have something on there, but we have a whole piece in our voters pamphlet that's distributed to every voter in the county. And if it's not reaching the right hands of the person that could read it or couldn't, depending on a translation, those are translated, but you would hope that one of these groups or somebody had seen that and would be able to provide.
But it's on your website.
Our pamphlet is on our website, correct?
Oh, the pamphlet, but you can't. That doesn't cost much money to put up.
More, we could
A
always.
link to this.
Yeah, or even like take advantage of the news right before an election. Invite them, come in, say, hey, just want to talk to you about our education for people that need translation. We have this, I mean, because that might be free, but you know.
We could always do more, and again, considering resources that, you know, we have the website, we could use that, but other considerations do cost money. But again, not to be lost in this, we are following the law.
Yeah.
We are accessible.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was just thinking that was a
Well,
something
it should
that,
definitely be in Spanish.
yeah.
Don't we have 19 languages on our health reports, you know, your insurance bills from the state? Isn't it, don't you have like 3 pages behind your, 3 pages of different languages?
So maybe we can get a
I mean, I'm not saying go that far, but I'm saying at least we should be doing in Spanish.
maybe look at that. What can we do to help Steve with the outreach portion of that and get it out there more? I think that would be important.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a whole bunch. I don't want to, you know, take over the whole table, but I do have a bunch unless there was something.
And I have some comments just related to the ballot boxes. So since the facilities department installs those and maintains those, so good comment as well.
As that was further down in the report, I guess I'll get there, but I'd like to just kind of step through some things first. One, I appreciate the audit. We solicited the audit. We asked for this audit. I was hoping to add that transparency to what we do. This was, you know, at least the concept a couple of years ago before Elizabeth started, when the ask was, oh, do you have any audit ideas? I'm like, well, yeah, we're getting a lot of public records requests, and there's a lot of concerns about what's happening with elections. So, well, let's do an audit. Let's take a look at a full election cycle and see what we do and follow along. And hopefully that will show that we are following checks and balances, we are following the law. So that's the background here. You know, I'll talk about the ballot security plan in a second, but yeah, the big piece was this accessibility of our drop boxes. And I don't agree with the findings or even that whole entire section in there. And because of that, I had hoped that this report wasn't even going to be out right now. I wanted to have a conversation with the committee before this was published. I asked the auditor to honor that request. But here it is. It's online. It's out there for the world to see. Because I don't think that this section should be there, and I'll have a conversation about why I feel that way. But I mean, it's in her guidelines to honor those, that she can honor that request. But that really wasn't heard. You know, I get emotional about this. It happens every time we come to this forum. But elections are under attack, and we're under attack by lack of funding, federal funding cuts that leave our cybersecurity systems at risk, threats to election workers, my peers that are here, the false narratives, the misinformation, all of this. And then as I appreciate that some of this audit did highlight what we're doing right, what we're doing well, even some of those had some undertones like it could be fraud, it could be from within. And that's disrespectful to the integrity of myself and my staff. But bigger than that, whatever's publicized, whatever's published should be accurate, should be informative and accurate. And this is not accurate. And even for the parts that are, like I said, there's undertones and a tone that is almost leading to something else is here. You're missing something because I didn't agree to share a report or anything else. So that's why I'd like to step through this report and take the time. Very deliberate.
Somebody has an objection?
Stepping through, go into page 125. There's increased voter diversity and concerns about data security present additional challenges. I mean, I know what the concerns about elections are and maybe data security, but I just asked for a little bit more clarity on that, and I don't have that. The next part, suggesting that we sustain the culture of continuous improvement. That's why we are who we are. That's how we get things right, because we do continuously improve. That might have been lost in this conversation of the audit, but we are as accurate as we are today because of the checks and balances, following the law, and then evaluating how we did after each election. But suggesting that we start doing that, again, is something that I don't agree with. I just feel like that's a.
You mind some sort of back and forth as we go?
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, I'll be slower. Yeah.
Because I think the language is what we're in this.
Yes, sir.
So maybe some focus on it. So you're talking about sustaining a culture of continuous improvement.
Yes.
Will empower the office to enhance transparency.
So the statement of that we should sustain, or that sustaining will empower the office. We do that.
Sustaining means to continue.
Yeah. My perception
Power
is, I mean, I hear what you're saying about some of these things, but just for me reading the report, the things that you were doing well, I didn't get any undertones in reading that, just personally.
Maybe.
And so we go through it, but you know, I hear some of the disagreements on at least in some of the things, but just from my own perspective, reading the report, I did not get the undertones of things that are doing well. There was not anything else that just.
Yeah, I see empower, it'll empower, suggest perhaps the creation of a new, something new.
I think that particular line, Steve, sustaining means that you're already doing it, and just continuing to do it just increases everybody's ability to move forward. I think if it were negative, the language would be a little bit different. Needs to sustain or needs to create. I think to me is a compliment. I'm not seeing it as a negative.
It's an active word. That's,
Yeah.
And so this is my thought on it. But that it will empower us so that we can better support voters. I'm just saying that we are doing that. We are better supporting voters. Every election. And that's, to me, as I read that,
I see your point, yeah.
that this implies that we're not following it. On page 725, due to the clerk's refusal, I looked through this. I mean, refusals, it's a harsh word. We talked about it many times, and I thought that I had explained why I was not comfortable in providing it. It wasn't a flat out refusal, but flat out refusal to cooperate. I felt like I was fully cooperative with the process, but my comfort level in sharing this critical piece that is guarded and approved. I just feel like some of the, again, it's just more about the tone. I saw that throughout.
We had a conversation here on the audit committee.
Yes.
So
And
we
it-
did.
I don't want to rehash it, but I just want to say, because it said refuse throughout, and then to cooperate, and I did cooperate, and I did explain why.
You
So
explained why, but you didn't provide the information.
I thought it was a cannot, not, didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, there's lacks of clarity from me or from I'm just speaking for myself here, of what is what's the process of what is requested, and then if it's not comfortable to share, or if there's a law preventing to share, or there's statutes preventing to share, or just don't want to, like, how is that
We did have
clear?
conversations about, confidential information and protecting confidential information. The auditor's office has a lot of safeguards in place to protect confidential information. We have access to a lot of confidential information which we need for our auditing process. We don't report confidential information. And I talked with Steve about, there's processes where we can make recommendations to staff without making it public, so that the committee wouldn't have seen it because it's confidential. And we talked about that's an option we have, and he didn't want to go that route either. And then he never gave an explanation of why this information shouldn't be shared with the auditor. So that was why the language of refusal, and that's all in the report as well.
I thought it provided a lot of information regarding what the systems that I'm guarding, and the fact that it is critical infrastructure. There are very specific state directives not to share some of that information, and I didn't feel comfortable with where it would go, and all due respect, whatever you would do with it, I don't know that.
But you never pointed to those state directives.
can we get those?
I handed them out in the last meeting, in fact, and I know I shared them with you prior to that.
That was the law that referenced in the report, I believe is what you're.
There is statute and there are state directives.
But this isn't necessarily about this rehashing this issue.
Yeah,
We're talking about
yeah.
the tone of the report,
Yes.
and maybe it's just the weight of the entire report, not specific phrase here and there, so.
On the next page, on page 8, there's reference to a last year integrated audit of my department. There's a reference to previous findings that have been addressed, acknowledged, and closed. And I just don't see where it's relevant to this audit. And I asked the auditor to remove that section. It's the previous findings related to information security also contributed to heightened sense of risk in this area and during the 2024 integrated audit. Again, findings acknowledged and closed in a previous audit.
That is part of assessing risk, though. That is part of her process. And
and I actually remember the audit and yeah, shared password, it's part of the process and that shows high risk.
It was closed.
That's why it came up on the horizon. Okay.
In fact, it was addressed and closed before that audit included.
And it would have been good to go through and make sure that it wasn't happening in this case as well, but we weren't able to do that.
On the next page, this is, you know, the gist of why I wanted to step through it. It's the ballot drop box is not fully accessible on page 10. Once again, we are following the law. Our boxes are accessible. The height standards that Elizabeth was citing are in this, the ballot box checklist from Department of Justice from 2010. This checklist, and as you even look through it, it's referring to a polling place. And you can see the diagram too, the polling place. Our office is considered a polling place upstairs. We have one polling place in the county, and our office is fully accessible. Our drive-through boxes are also accessible, but the intent, and as they're labeled as drive-through, are intended for people to be accessing them while in a motor vehicle, not on foot. So as you're accessing them, able-bodied or disabled, the intent is that you're in a vehicle. This checklist that is repeatedly cited, it has to do with a polling place.
There are separate guidelines for vehicle driver boxes.
They're not defined, but, well.
I can speak to that too.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. With the exception of an exception that I thought I printed out. I did put it up here. On the back of that, one of the handouts, there's an ADA law reference that very specifically says drive-up depositories shall not be required to comply with 309, and 309 being ADA law. Depositories include but aren't limited to these other things, like receptacles, post office, you know, libraries. Not limited to. It's not much of a jump to say that it could be a ballot drop box as well. We get tens of thousands of ballots deposited in our drop boxes every election, hundreds of thousands over the last couple of decades. These were inaccessible. I think we would have heard, and that's why a lot of my peers are here today as well. Measure that this standard is, or what is being measured now, or the standard does not apply or should not apply. That's not the intent of these drive-through drop boxes. Walk-ups are, we have a couple of walk-ups throughout the county. One right outside here, we have a drive-through, and then separately a walk-up. We have a walk-up in Sisters. Those meet the height requirements, but the drive-throughs shouldn't be held to that same standard. This just seemed like it was backed by law. And if I'm missing the law, let me know what it is.
So I guess my question, because I didn't hear the answer, sorry. So is there a different, for a drive-through, is it different than if it's a walk-up, or do you have to consider the possibility that somebody would walk up into a drive-through? I guess that's the question, right?
I would never advertise one of our drive-throughs to be, I would never suggest to somebody to walk up to it.
So specifically, this addresses an accessible route. An accessible route is specifically for pedestrians. So our team, we would not apply this to a drive-up box. And to your question, there's not an ADA standard for drive-up boxes, whether it's for businesses, for government. So basically, they're mutually exclusive. So you would never route an accessible pedestrian route through a drive aisle where vehicles use it. So we would not even want to encourage people to use a drive-up box. And so the height standards, they vary due to pavement variability. It doesn't affect someone if it were too low, if it met the lowest standard of a walk-up box, which this checklist applies to, it would actually be too low to be able to use from a vehicle. And so when our team installs the boxes, we install them for use with vehicles. In the case of the drive-up box at the Ben Parks and Rec site where they subsequently installed a gate, that's something we'll work with the clerk's office to Ben Parks and Rec to move that box so that it's now so that it can be accessed by vehicles. So we work with the ADA every day. We have an in-house expert with master's degree in architecture. I asked him to review this. He came to the same conclusion that this standard would apply to any walk-up boxes that we have, but not to a drive-up.
I talked to Steve about the 4-H location at the fairgrounds because to me that's like out there in the dark. And I know that there are people at the administration office, maybe more than they are at the 4-H office. And are there any cameras on that box? And then the other one I am concerned with was the Pine Nursery. So, and you listened to what I said, but you didn't, I mean, maybe that's just me thinking that I would really appreciate those boxes being somewhere else. Is there one at the Redmond Library?
Yes, and that, I mean, the location of the Dropbox is a different.
Okay, well,
conversation.
I know it
All
was,
due respect, and I'm happy to have that conversation with you
Well,
about locations. but-
yeah, well, we've already had the conversation
Yeah.
and, I'm sitting here and I'm going like, it's made me uncomfortable for a while and, they're still there.
Is there a sign that says drive up only?
There's not. And they're not identified as drive-up boxes. So the only one, I think the one here is identified as a walk-up, but the others are not identified either way.
I mean, that kind of fucked up.
Part of the solution.
Yeah,
is to
'cause like-
make it very clear that this is a drive up only, and then maybe that's.
And I want to bring up another reason why I felt it was important to keep this in the report, which is I think it brings up another question of why is our system overly then designed for drivers and that people who don't have vehicles can't access drop boxes as well. I was thinking this was a way to make these more accessible because lowering these by 1 inch or 5 inches for the other one wouldn't make them not usable by drivers. It just opens them up for more opportunities. And I feel like this is a conversation that's worth having. How can we make our voting system as accessible to the most amount of people? So I appreciate having this conversation because I think this is why we do audits so that we can talk about these things.
I would say either designate them as drive up only or make it so they're accessible to both people walking up and driving.
So I don't think you can do both because we don't want to encourage people to walk into drive aisles. So the solution might be to add separate, which is what we did out here, to add separate walk-up boxes.
Yeah.
So here, we notice an issue. I observe traffic flow during elections, every election to make sure there aren't issues and to look at anything we can do to improve. So we added a drop-up box here because it was actually slowing down the flow of the vehicle traffic when we would have people stepping in front of vehicles and walking through the drive aisle in a place that did not have a crosswalk, was not identified for pedestrian traffic. So that has the first election cycle, it took people a little while to find it. We flagged it. We actually painted arrows on the sidewalk all the way out to Wall Street. And so I think, and Steve, I would expect you to be open to this. If there's more demand for walk up and cycle up drop boxes, there could be an opportunity to add more. And also to identify drive-up boxes as drive-up boxes that they're intended for driving. But the main thing from a facility standpoint is that for safety reasons, we wouldn't want to encourage people to walk or take a wheelchair into a drive aisle. And then secondly, there are just construction challenges with meeting the ADA standard for a 1/2 inch or less gap in a parking lot. And most of those parking lots are managed by outside entities because we have agreements. And there's a whole process we go through in order to site drop boxes, which is actually very, very challenging. Property management works with facilities, the clerk's office, and then we work with folks like Ben Parks and Rec, City of Redmond, City of Bend and others, so.
So Larkspur, that box, they put a gate in front of it. How long ago did they do that?
They did that last year. There's a photo of it, of these findings. That's one that we're currently working with Park and Rec to address. That, to me, that's the one in here that I wholeheartedly agree. But to start and say that we want to have a conversation, but then to leave the whole section saying that they're not accessible, that's not,
It says they're not fully accessible.
yeah, or not fully accessible.
Well, I mean, if we don't have it designated as a drive up only and somebody, even though we don't want them to,
I think we do, maybe.
I mean, we don't
just
want
need to
them
be-
to walk up, but people are doing it, right? That's the problem.
I think we need to be more intentional and ensure that we're advertising it everywhere we have a reference that it does say drive-through.
Yeah.
That might be inconsistent now. That's an area for improvement, but that's not what the ask was. The ask was that, that table clearly highlighted in red saying that we're out of spec. When we're not, those are truly drive-through boxes.
But they're not labeled as such. So if that's what they truly are, then I mean.
The fix for the
that's where
audit.
we go to,
Yeah,
these are
this
drive up
is the
only.
information right now based on the fact that they're not labeled, that they're not, they're whatever. If we fix that and put up drive-through only, then that answers or addresses the finding in the audit. And then that finding just becomes null and void because now we've made the change. And so now we don't have to worry about,
Be resolved.
it can be resolved. Thank you. The right word.
We do have
Fix it.
pedestrian boxes.
We do. We have one right outside here. We have one upstairs in our lobby. The City of Sisters box.
At City Hall.
That resolves.
Sister City Hall is also a walk-up.
And there's a lot out there, Steve. I get it. There's a lot of those
How
out
many
there.
boxes are out there?
11.
What's that? What are?
How many boxes?
Drive up boxes are.
Oh, I mean, yeah, your USPS boxes are, if you go to the post office, that box is as high as these ones that are listed in that table. Most are to that standard, as I mentioned, of the exceptions in ADA that are going to be your drive-through ATM height and some of your other. And some of the other things that are in here. And just, it was the whole section, and that's my point, is that sure, if the case is that we could label things better, does that warrant putting in a leading headline to say that we're not accessible? Or to take photos of a crack in the ground that's 50 feet away from a drive-through drop box that's entirely on a sidewalk far away from an entirely different curb? That's not even the same area, it's 50 feet away. I just wanted to have the conversation with the committee before this was distributed. And again, I guess that request wasn't heard, but I thought it was part of the process. And it's unfortunate that this in its current state is out there. I'd ask that this entire section be rewritten, and I hope the committee considers that.
There's, and the reason is there's not a process for that. Like once the audit comes to the audit committee, it's the audit. So that's.
Well, typically the process, you meet with her, not necessarily the audit.
And we did meet.
And so this management response that's in there is part of the public report, right? But it's.
And
As is.
and Steve didn't want to include his full response until he talked with you. So his full response will be added when he's ready to provide it.
I added that management response after I had already articulated to Elizabeth to hold on publishing the report. And I thought that she had acknowledged and heard that. I'd have to check my emails to make sure. But as part of this process, when it says the county internal auditor may grant additional time if requested, I requested it. And so I don't know why it was still published in its current state when it's as misleading as it is.
Requested to talk to the committee first.
And I said, I also said before it was published.
But I needed to share it with the committee in order to have this conversation.
And in order to share it to committee, does that mean it goes public?
Yes, because you're public.
Well, with or without that, then it could have been shared in an executive session. I think you knew what I was asking. I felt like it was.
There's an allowance
There
for.
can't be an executive session for that. No.
Well, that's where I think the whole process, I think something is fundamentally flawed or wrong with this process. If a department doesn't have say before something goes public, we can have our conversations and significantly disagree with something as important as accessibility, but yet you have the ability to go ahead and publish something unvetted, unchecked, even without the committee having eyes on it. That's where something is.
That's how auditing works, and that's why this is an independent process that.
Management has a response. Management gets to respond for rebuttal. I was part of a larger performance audit team, and yes, that's your management response.
And it'll show up in the a follow-up report, right? We do a
Yeah.
follow-up and we show the response and.
Well, the response should be in this report.
Yeah, that's the chance to.
Okay, I see.
That part.
Rebut.
Yeah, I mean, that's also work in government. I mean, I work in government, all my emails, everything, unless it's personnel matters, goes out. And I guess I'm a little saddened because when you just read it on the surface, besides the scope impairments, it's a really good audit.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of shocked at how just the reaction to it, because it is really good. I looked through it, I was like, wow, that's really cool. This is happening. It gives me confidence, but then have such a visceral response of like, there is something that could be done here. And it's not a huge thing. And I don't understand. It's not a huge headline grabbing, and I've written and read way too many audit reports, but this is a really good audit. I guess, like I said, even the boxes, well, if we don't expect people to drive up with a wheelchair, then we need to make sure that's happening, because it's a safety issue either way. But the rest of it is good stuff. So I guess and the questioning the process, this is what the process is. It's what it is everywhere that does these type of audit. So yeah, I guess I'm a little surprised right now.
Well, I agree, it's a good audit too, but regardless of that, I'm hearing Steve say that his feeling is that there's needs to be administrative fairness in the processes. And I think we need to hear that from Steve and any other department head that has something to say about that. And if we believe that there is some administrative fairness that is not taking place, and maybe there's some changes that can restore department heads' trust in the process and create administrative fairness, we need to think about those things.
I'll just, a couple quick comments. Number one is, I think one of the things Steve and I talked about is it was published and perhaps there could have been a draft watermark. Maybe it was done, but to indicate to the public that the management response, something's forthcoming. Because I appreciate Daryl's comment that it'll be revised, it'll be included, but most people aren't going to look at that. It's just, they're going to see what's here now and then move on. And so there wasn't a draft watermark, and maybe that would have been one element of it. And the other piece is, I think it's indicative when we see how many clerks are on our Zoom meeting right now. Clearly, Steve's raising issues that are beyond Deschutes County's interest and possibly concern. Some of these, and I'm not saying right, wrong, or otherwise. It is what it is. But I think it's important to recognize how many people are very, very interested in what this audit's findings, recommendations are.
That is, I mean, I've expressed these concerns with my peers, and that is why so many are here today, of both the ballot security plan being one and accessibility. And I appreciate, again, the positive components of the audit, and I'm thankful that people may read it and be happy and surprised, and that we're following things that check out. But it's when somebody starts casting doubt on accessibility of what we're doing, when all we do is try to enable voter access and ensure that they can independently cast their ballot. That is what we do. So when the headline is leading and say that they're not fully accessible, that's what gives election officials great concern. Any additional doubt that's being cast on it, because again, all we're getting it from a lot of different angles. And again, these drop boxes, we're not using something different that other counties aren't, or that other states aren't. This is a standard drop box. There are a lot of vendors, a lot of flavors of those drop boxes, but they make one size post, and that one size post is in. If you're putting it on a curb, it will put you in that lane.
Except that you do have some that do meet that standard.
Yeah. So if, and then you would need a custom post, which our vendor can provide, but they don't provide a lot of them because counties aren't doing what you're suggesting.
One out here, the drive-through, one out here, make the stand, I think there were other.
Is there possible
Joe
for
has the top.
legislation for to change, you know what I mean? Not to like, this is like the start of it, but to define
Yes.
what a drive up drop box height should
Well, I
be.
think it is. I mean, the access board is very clear that these apply to walk up and there is not a standard for drive up. If we need to do a better job of identifying those, of adding more walk ups, but to me, the important thing is that from a facilities perspective, when we install these, we don't reference this standard because by law it doesn't apply.
And the state is listening. The state has heard this concern as well. And if there could be something put into a rule that would address it. Other states have that and they exclude drop boxes very specifically from that same ADA standard. Drive-through drop boxes.
Are there other comments, questions, input from anybody online or here?
I think just a general comment, I think if you go to any city park, you're gonna have ADA issues. Just because typically anything that was constructed over 10 years ago, you got 15 years ago, you're gonna have ADA issues generally because of funding. So they're just very common. And they're typically fixed, when major improvements are made and money's available to make changes. So to have ADA issues certainly isn't unique to the county Dropbox situation.
Which is not to say that those issues shouldn't be pointed out.
No, it's not. In fact, they should be and they always are. It's just, but they're not addressed.
That's what this
Typically
is.
not
It's
corrected
pointed this out and then it gives us a chance to fix it the way it needs to be, whether we designate or not designate, or the state ends up writing a law or whatever they do. I think this is just more of a, hey, this is what it is. This is the audit. This is what we found. Now, what do we do to fix it? So could be something as simple, put up, make it so it's drive up only. It could be designated, whatever. But I think just fixing, just let's fix it. What do we need to do to fix it from the
I have to comment.
audit?
I'm also the county's ADA coordinator. I work closely with Lee on ADA complaints. And if there was a state law saying it's got to be, if it's too prescriptive, the unintended consequence is you have less of them because it's too burdensome. And so the answer is you end up removing them. But my other comment is actually much broader. I'm just hearing a lot of audit committee members getting into the operations of the county, and I don't think it's the audit committee's role. Is my perspective.
It's a good point. We're here to review the audit, not create policy for.
Well, I would hope that the Larkspur gate be removed. Like sooner rather, by next March. Are they responding at all?
We lock the gate.
I know. They're not gonna move it, so then that box needs to be moved. So have we made plans to move it?
But I don't, again, all due respect, that's not part of the conversation right now.
I know, well, I'm really glad that you didn't find any more dead people on the list, and I think you checked that, didn't you? Because I called 3 pages and I found, somebody who passed away 5 years ago. So just to know that things are cleaned up, because actually when people leave Oregon, they don't care that they're still left on our voter rolls. And I know there's a form they have to fill out and they don't care.
Rochelle, you had hand up?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, thank you for letting us attend this and making this a public meeting. We appreciate that. We do have a lot of clerk support here, and that is because of some of the things that we read in this report that were a little alarming. Most of us counties do what Steve does with our drive-through boxes, and they're listed on our websites as drive-through boxes. It's just like you would be going to McDonald's, you wouldn't expect you to be served if you walked through, you're not going to get your meal. So we all do follow this same standard. And as far as security plans go, we do not share ours with auditors or anyone, and we've actually been instructed by our legal counsel not to do that. And that is because of the safety and securities around elections. So it's also in law, it's also in state directive, and we do not share those. Thank you.
Thanks. Dan, I think you had your hand up also.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for allowing us to participate and to give comment. And I'm going to echo, I think, what Rochelle just said, which is that also here in Washington County, I would not, with all due respect to the auditing profession, I would not give my auditor our security plan or any information contained in that security plan about our tabulation system. And as Rochelle mentioned, not only the basis for that would be ORS 254-074, but also Secretary of State Directive 2022-3 from May 3rd, 2022. And that would be the basis for that. So I think Steve is on solid ground in his decision there. Thanks.
Thanks for the comments. Anybody else have any comments, questions on this piece? Okay. There's one more. Bobby.
Hi, I'm Bobby Childers from Morrow County.
Hi, Bobby.
Hi. Well, when we talk about these drive-ups, as Rochelle said, we have things on our website that tell you where our drive-up boxes are. But the bigger picture is the clerk is the one that decides where those go and if we have them. They're not a requirement. They're something we provide. So because we are a vote by mail state, so it would probably be easier for Steve just to shut some of those down completely. So careful what you wish for sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? All right, thanks everyone. Courthouse reconstruction follow-up report and presentation.
Great. So this is a follow-up presentation on the Facilities Department courthouse audit. This was actually ready last audit committee meeting, but Lee was not available to attend, so we put it on the agenda this time instead. So some background. So of course, I should mention first that Aaron Kay was really the lead on this audit. So I may not have as much on the background as he did because he really did a whole lot of work on this one. So these are the evolution of the county courthouse. The first county courthouse was built in 1940. In 1977, a new addition kind of annex was built next door. And now we are currently in the process of adding another new part to the courthouse. So that is what this project is about, and that's a conceptual drawing of what you've probably all driven by is still in process, but getting closer to looking like that every day. So this is just some of the timing and initial cost and the people involved in the project. So we have a few different people. We have Lee and Eric who are staff here, but then we also have an owner's rep, which is Cummings Management Group. They provide Lee and Eric advice on this project because it's very complex. The architect and engineer was LRS Architects. And then the construction manager, general contractor is Pence Contractors. And this just shows the timeline. So this is as of last summer, and this is the timeline that was in the audit showing when the project was initially created, how long the design phase took, how long the permitting took, and then when we did the audit, we had just gotten into construction, and that is now still ongoing. This just shows the different funding sources that had gone into the project at the time for a total of $44 million. So here are the recommendation updates. So overall, we saw improved procedures for risk assessment and oversight out of the Facilities Department. All three recommendations that we made have been resolved. So the first recommendation we had was for an adoption of a risk management framework. We saw some delays that were often cases due to project complexity. This was a really tough project. There was historic reconstruction. There was unidentified assets, utilities under the street that had to be mitigated. One of the things that we thought should have happened was that the contractor had agreed to put together a risk register, and that was something that was not delivered on. So we recommended that the county adopt a comprehensive pre-construction planning and risk management framework, and they did. And within their construction management manual, within that includes directions to staff to assess risk, create a risk register, and address risks. Another thing we saw, again, a complex project. We have a construction consultant involved, as well as a construction management company. And these staff, there was a lot of sort of overlap and informality between roles without necessarily defining policy responsibilities, potential conflicts, and miscommunications within team members. So we recommended more comprehensive policies and procedures to strengthen oversight of capital projects. And the construction management manual that the team put together directs staff to assemble a construction team with assigned roles and clear expectations. The final one was that we took a look at the contracts, and this probably will lead into the next. We'll be doing another phase of this audit post construction, looking at invoices and payments once the project's complete. But one thing we saw was there was some unclear contract language that's going to expose the county to risk down the line, including overpricing and potentially reduced value in the products that are offered. The contract that they were using was kind of based mostly on smaller construction contracts and other projects that they had in the past, but not really designed for a project of this complexity. So we recommended putting together a template for a construction manager, general contractor, general conditions template that would enhance cost controls at the county's disposal. And another issue we saw was kind of this sort of tentative approach to supplier diversity, where it was required, proposers were required to submit proposals for diverse contracting, but then on the other hand, those didn't carry through into any of the contracts. So there was no way to hold the contractors accountable for the commitments. So staff let us know that they don't really have any of these projects coming up in the near future. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense to put together an entire template. So they researched contracts from other public entities that they are keeping on file to use as a starting point for a new template when they do when they do have a project like this. And I guess I would call this resolved, because I do think that's a really strong first step. But I do, on the other hand, really hope that work does happen next time, even if it is 5 years down the road. Someone will think, hey, we had that audit, and maybe I can even reach out to the person down the road.
And I'm sure it will, because we shared similar concerns, and it's also across our county organization, across the state. It's a common concern. It was a topic of our meeting last year at AOC, was construction manager, general contractor specific contracts. And so many counties use a standard hard bid contract for CMGC projects, and there are things that are different in a CMGC contract that aren't addressed in a typical hard bid contract. And it's something that all counties struggle with. And most of us, construction manager, general contractor, which is the approach that we used for the courthouse project. And so out of that meeting, most people agree that Oregon State University kind of has the strongest template, CMGC template, so that we actually have that in our file, and we have several templates from other entities, but that's the one that we've kind of identified the gold standard to use as a starting point going forward. In several other counties, the presentation was actually put on by Multnomah County. Even the large counties have the same challenges with CMGC contracts. And so Multnomah County, they actually had identified some of the positive aspects of the Oregon State contract as well. And I think some of the other counties, Jackson County was very involved as well. So
Don't the architects have forms too?
they do. It's very difficult. They're really catered toward architects and to be used by architects. And so if the architect was acting as our owner's rep as well, and they were handling everything, it wouldn't be too hard. It would be simpler to use the AIA template, but AIA templates have gotten harder and harder to use over the years without an AIA membership. And then there's some county specific contract clauses that we think are important that the AIA doesn't cover, and the AIA is very, very difficult to amend or to edit. So that's a great question because it comes up. Oftentimes we'll have either mostly architects, but general contractors who want us to use the AIA template, and there are reasons why we don't. So
Glad you're phoning friends. I'm glad you're phoning friends.
yes,
We do that too. I've seen it with you.
Yep.
Good.
Use your lifelines.
Right. So
Well, the good news is after Aaron left the county, we've had a monthly report on the courthouse. So those monthly reports have been really helpful. We haven't had really any surprises, but we are, I believe, at 48 million now, not 44.
46.8. Yeah, and then
But there's another couple costs that are in there too.
and so
Yeah.
and the additional funds worth from interest and reserves. That's how that additional amount funded.
But it originally started, if you would look back several years ago, it was at 27 million. So it definitely took a big jump.
The world changed a little bit.
Well,
Everyone's CA.
yes.
Any other questions on the courthouse?
Well, are we derailing your presentation?
No, please go ahead. That's pretty much it.
I'm curious about the architect versus contractor oversight question in general. Is that something we think about and we decide that contractor oversight is always the way to go? Is there any thought that?
Well, what I was referring to more was if we put more construction administration onus on the architect firm as opposed to us acting as the owner's rep. So there's some entities that rely more on that. We kind of end up with three stronger parties.
Okay, but we're using a contractor as the owner's rep, right?
No, we have a separate owner's rep firm, Cumming Group. And then the CMGC process, what that does, construction manager, general contractor, the main benefit of that is allowing us to bring them on sooner. So that initial contract with Pence was $60-some thousand. That was for pre-construction services leading up to, so they were on board from conceptual design. And so that's the real, and then the bidding processes for them bidding now are slightly different than a hard bid project as well. But we're still, I may not, that my initial statement may be a little misleading, I guess, or not clear. Does that help?
Well, I know that in some big projects, just expensive projects, more expensive projects are the ones that use architects more throughout the whole process. I'm just curious.
I think we are in that sense. In the sense you're referring to, we have the architects on board. They do weekly site visits, reports, progress reports. They review all the pay apps before we review them. So there's really a triple review of the contractor's pay application. So I think we are using them for what you have in mind. It's just we have a third overarching oversight with both our owner's rep and then our capital improvement manager, Eric Nielsen, internally is kind of has eyes on the owner's rep, and then he's handling the coordination with our internal maintenance team to make sure that maintenance specific items that are important for us for the long haul for the building are being included.
And then we do have the facilities review committee and the courthouse comes to them. Thank you for that group. I really appreciate them. And then what is the completion date now for the courthouse?
August of 2026.
So less than a year.
And that kind of leads us into this. So we don't have next steps on this audit because all the recommendations were implemented. But did want to let you all know that we are planning a post-construction audit of the courthouse project. And we'll start planning for that in the spring of 26.
Or sooner.
Or even
We know
sooner.
it's- And that's because there will be a lot of information gathered, and so we want to make sure that we have plenty of time to be responsive.
Great.
Any other questions or comments? So in process and upcoming, sheriffs.
Oh, actually, there's one
Language
more.
access.
Oh, I'm sorry, checked the wrong one. Language access follow-up.
So this is the presentation for the language access audit, which we published last January. Just an update on where everyone is on this one. So some background on this. This is the diversity of people who need language access in Deschutes County. So these are showing the census tracts of the people who speak English. The term in the census is speak English less than well, but it's people who might need help with interpreting government forms and government processes if it's offered only in English. So according to the census there were 3,243 people in Deschutes County who needed language assistance for Spanish. In this one, we used a series for criteria, different rules and best practices. So the way it's interpreted now, Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Acts prohibits national origin discrimination, and the interpretation is that includes language access when information is only provided in English. And then the U.S. Department of Justice puts out a tool to help their own federal government and also other government entities or entities that receive federal grants with tools for implementing language access programs. These were our recommendation updates. So overall, we see responsibilities for language access were clarified and efforts are underway to update policies. One recommendation resolved, 4 in process. So the first one that was resolved was that we saw that there wasn't really clearly defined who in the county was responsible for language access. So after the audit, we recommended that the county administrator assign responsibility and the county administrator assigned it to the deputy county administrator who is overseeing the rich management portfolio. Whitney's.
I was gonna say, which person is that?
Yeah, so which one of you?
We're in transition.
We're in a transition. So historically that's been Eric, but it's transitioning to me over the course of this year.
We looked at the Civil Rights Act policy, which is where the language access was rolled into the Civil Rights Act policy. But there weren't, it didn't really provide clear guidance on how to comply with the rules related to language access. So we recommended updating the Civil Rights Act policy to provide clearer guidance to staff. There was a planned implementation for that. There was vacancies in the HR department that were related to getting this process implemented. And then I think also the deputy directors were assigned roles in HR, which also took away their capacity for implementing the recommendation. But now it is tasked to risk management, and they are in the process of, I think, having a specific language access policy, rather than updating the Civil Rights Act policy. It's underway. We also noted that the plan portions of the, there was, I think over the language access portion of the Civil Rights Act plan, didn't really address all the factors that you would typically figure would be in a plan. Instead of really defining the problem and how staff would go about achieving it, in what time frame, and what funds would be needed in order to implement the plan. It was sort of more philosophical ideals that they would follow to provide language access. So we recommended developing a more specific plan based on the guidance in the language access planning tool. And this one, as the other one, was delayed due to staff vacancies, but it's still underway. This one was that we found that staff were having trouble implementing aspects of a language access program. There were some departments that were doing a really good job of identifying which documents needed to be readily translated and available, but other departments were not as on top of that. We also found that contracted vendors were underused and uncoordinated, where there were multiple vendors doing similar work. There were single vendors who had multiple contracts. There was a contractor who the county had done a whole lot of work in trying to procure that was never used. So we figured that having more guidance to staff about how to actually implement this policy, the policy would help streamline implementation. We recommended that administration develop a set of countywide procedures, because we figured there were things that were common enough across that they would be applicable. Administration has said, well, actually, it's really more complicated than that, and really the processes within each department are really different. But they've committed to working with each department to develop more department-specific procedures. I think that's more work for them, but they still are committed to giving more guidance to staff. And then this was the last one, which was that we found that there were some unclear guidance for how to use bilingual employees that were leading to some burnout, and also potentially some employees who were providing services without compensation. So we recommended that they create a policy specifically for how the bilingual program would be implemented, including how would people be selected for positions, or how would positions be identified as bilingual, how testing would occur, what expectations there were, and how people would be compensated. And this, again, as others parts of this audit had, there was some staff vacancies, and so implementation of this has been delayed, but is in process. And so our next steps is that this one will these recommendations will roll over into our global follow-up. So we'll be reporting on those until implementation. That's where we are on that.
Just curious, as HR director, it's.
Hi. So last time, Susan, who used to be our performance auditor, is now the HR director, and the position was vacant for a while, so she's got a lot of catching up. It's doing a great job.
And to be clear, it wasn't just the HR director, it was also HR manager.
Right.
And 2 other positions in HR, and
Half the
clerk's offices, HR is even smaller, and serving 1,250 employees and then their families, and it's, so
It's a
it's,
lot.
and there's still 3 vacancies.
Well, hopefully after today, will only be 1 vacancy.
Okay.
Do we have a timeline at all just like 6 months, 8 months? So,
I don't have an answer for you.
okay, just curious. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on? English? Okay, now, in process and upcoming. Sheriff's Office body.
The sheriff's office body and auto cameras, just as an update, we weren't able to access the body camera footage, so that audit will also have a very significant scope impairment. But I've shared my preliminary findings with the sheriff's office. They're getting them back to me, so that's going through the process, and I hope the share that audit with you this summer meeting. Also, still in the planning phases for the houselessness audit. This one's been complicated because there's not really a place where houselessness sits within the county. There's also not really, I guess like any model that shows where houselessness should sit, whether that is within, is that a county function? Is that a consortium of nonprofits? Is that a city function? So that's those kind of questions have been making this take a little longer than it usually does, but I'm getting close to figuring that out, and should have objectives to share with you definitely by the next meeting. And then there's a link to the status report in the agenda. I'm not going to go through, but you can see it's what we've talked about, the audits we're doing and working on, and just how we spend our time.
Okay, any questions or comments on those? Anybody? So special topics, preparation for topics to be discussed at the December meeting, the annual report.
So I requested that this get added to the agenda. So there's two things that we do at the December meeting. One is that we share the audit committee. You share your report to the Board of County Commissioners who would also attend that meeting. In the past, staff has always prepared that audit and pretty much day of handed it off to Daryl, and then he reads it to the county commissioners. And it includes things like who's on the audit committee, what reports were issued the prior year, work that you did on putting together the annual plan. There's another time analysis of how I've spent my time, and then sort of just general overall conclusions about both the external and internal auditor. And that's fine, that's worked in the past and it can work in the future. And I definitely am happy to pull all that information together for you. But I was wondering if you wanted an opportunity to have a bit more ownership over this report and what gets presented to the county commissioners. And if you let me know and who would be interested, I'm happy to support doing that process.
Is there a way we can see the one from last year?
There's a link to it.
Oh, that is right there. Okay, perfect. Okay. I want to go look at it since I'm the new guy on the block. So.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
The only thought I had was doing something to make the report, I don't know, put some maybe information for the public regarding some of the regarding audit committee members, some information about what the audit committee does in case there's an opening. There may be an eye on it and we may have interest submitted by members of the public to join us. Just something extra, something new that we're not currently doing. Everything else I think makes sense.
So if you have comments.
So I'm hearing that I should do what I did last year.
I mean,
Maybe in addition,
might get some emails from people.
yeah, you know,
Some feedback on it? Is there something that's lacking?
I have not gotten any feedback. It just honestly, it felt a little funny for me to be writing your report and presenting it like, oh, Daryl, here, read this to Patty.
I mean, something that Patty's looking for. Are we doing too much, or do we need to put as much into it as put in?
How long?
Because I really believe in having the audit committee. I so appreciate you giving. No, I meant honestly, as a county commissioner, it means a lot to me. So whatever you can add to it, I think it's really good. You're definitely
What's
valuable.
the deadline for if you do need to prepare it? When do you need comment?
Let's see, well, one thing that's awkward is I don't really have a way to get comments from you. Other than if there was a subcommittee, I could get comments from the subcommittee. Because I really shouldn't be shopping around and gathering feedback from you. But let's see, the committee meeting, I think, is December 13th. And so I probably would want to have the report complete by the end of November in order to get it ready for the meeting.
So you'd have to have the what you put together years past to potentially a subcommittee mid-November at the very latest to provide feedback.
Something like that.
Daryl, do we want to put together a subcommittee for that?
December 13th is a Saturday.
Oh, well, it's well,
the 12th then.
Go ahead.
We could certainly do that. The subcommittee. We could. I do think that, you know, some of us that are on the outside that don't work for the county every day are somewhat reliant upon what we're given to by the organization. We're not there every day, so there's a lot of, I don't know how much we can really add other than, you know, a function of what we see in the reports we review and that. And
Well, we could set up the framework and subcommittee and not add anything.
we can do that.
That might be a way to gather recommendations if we want the report changed or added, new things added or something like that.
Yeah, at least to create the opportunity.
Yeah.
I guess they could look at the last year's report and make comments or suggestions.
That's what I was.
I mean, Daryl had a good idea about, you know, what the committee does, who's on the committee, and potential opportunity for public input to the committee. Those type of things.
I'll go in and take a look at it, you know, not having seen it from last year, so I had thoughts about maybe how to update.
I think we could do most of this communication over email.
Yeah.
Subcommittee.
I would think so.
Compile information. It's a compilation of information.
Yeah. Yep.
And it does, the previous years does start with that, the members and terms and some other
You're looking
information.
at it,
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Maybe not the deep dive into the mission statement or anything like that, but at least some of that general information.
So do we want to form a subcommittee right now? How's the process?
Well, it sounds like the timing we probably have.
Right. So
If Elizabeth needs it by mid-November to get her enough time to have it done by the end of November.
Is that Daryl sitting by a swimming pool?
It looks
No,
like
it's Moraine, it's Moraine Lake, just a picture.
I was gonna
background.
go,
I know, I was thinking,
this is really sad. It's like
No,
freezing
not that
outside.
good.
we're ready for
Almost
snow.
Almost
We
snowing.
were at Moraine Lake a couple weeks ago. It's just that.
Oh, Daryl. You don't have to tell the truth.
So
I
are
am
there
in Southern California, but no pool.
It makes it colder than here, I'm sure.
any volunteers to be on this subcommittee?
I'll do it.
What do you need, Elizabeth? Just
Subcommittee to
three?
review the annual report
It can
presented to.
be no more than 4, but it could be just 1.
Oh, thanks.
So
Kristen.
Elizabeth and Kristen. Jody's not here. I don't know if you want, usually when you're not here.
Yeah, I
so
think
you
we should be Jody on it.
Volunteer.
automatically volunteer.
Jody, guess what?
You're voluntold.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll put her down.
I also wanted to just make you all aware that that we formalized last year our bylaws, and I would like to have a more formal process for electing the chair and the vice chair. Daryl has done a great job for years, and I really appreciate the work that he does, but it's all, no one even asks him. We just, no, I do ask him, and he always says yes, but it's just sort of, he's been picking it up for a while. We haven't had discussion about, like, he's not itching to get off. In fact, he's offered to do it again. But I did want to kind of mention that we should be prepared at the next committee meeting to have those elections. And then we'd also be looking for a vice chair position. And I think one of the things is nice about a vice chair position is that it does in some way offer Daryl an exit ramp if he ever does want to partake of that and get someone else used to the functions of performing the functions.
No, I'm just.
Just to add to that, if there's anybody that really wants to do it and take it, you know, effective next year, I'd be happy to acquiesce to that. So just so you know.
Lots of silence there on this.
Okay. Okay, that's fine too. And I think we do need to formalize the
Appreciate you
vice
very
chair.
much, right?
Vice chair.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And here I nominate her for vice chair.
Daryl's good. He's been my budget committee chair before.
He is good.
He is great at running these and putting things succinctly, so.
So that's
Very
really
much
just a
appreciated.
heads up and that process takes place at the next meeting. But if any of you are thinking, might want to put your name in the hat for vice chair, start thinking about that.
Next item, proposal to establish a subcommittee to support ongoing auditor performance review.
This was also from me. So we had my performance review a couple of weeks ago, I think. And just talking to some of the members here would like a way to get more information back from department heads that, you know, I think department heads submit comments to Nick, but there's not any back and forth. There's no real way to ask questions of them, what they mean. So some people have talked about really wanting to engage in more of a conversation about that. We talked about a few different ways. We actually did ask county legal if we could have them come to our audit committee meeting and hold an executive session, thinking that maybe people would feel more comfortable being frank if it was held in an executive session. But our county legal said, no, that would not be eligible for an executive session. And so the other idea we came up with was just having a subcommittee who would offer a few meetings that invite department heads to come in and provide feedback and sort of engage in a conversation about that. So so it would be up to you to decide if you wanted to form a subcommittee for that purpose.
Thoughts, anyone?
And again, it would be no more than 4 people. And then considering that we have 2 department heads on, or well, you're not a voting member, so I don't think you matter. If Steve and Lee wanted to attend as just, even if they wanted to attend as department heads, they would also be attending as committee members. So if they were, it causes a little complications.
And I'm sorry, what is the purpose again? What would the purpose be for the subcommittee?
To engage in conversations with department heads on my performance.
And I was one of the ones.
Yeah, I think I was
Maybe
one.
the only one.
I was one of the ones too.
Who thought it'd be a good idea. So I think we should have that kind of subcommittee to take the time to hear concerns like some of the concerns Steve had today that really hard to fully hear those at a regular.
I agree, and I expressed some more interest in having conversations and just the more working process of. So I'll volunteer.
I get, it also gives us the opportunity, those of us who aren't at the county every day, to hear from county employees. It provides a forum for that.
So far, myself and Phil.
And Daryl?
Yeah, okay. The other thing I'd say, you know, maybe we should start that early next year, like January, rather than get it entangled in the holidays and
sure,
people might not be available.
I'm fine with any of those comments.
Your call, department heads will be available. Yeah, sure. That happens, but it's your process, and the only thing I do think about from was I want to have a performance evaluation completed. Given this, I don't know if anything's been submitted. I don't want to get it now, but I just don't have a performance evaluation.
It is completed.
It is. Oh, good.
It's done. Yeah.
I just want to make sure we were.
This would be for next year.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
Well,
So-
just till January, that's not
So
bad.
it'll be January before.
That's not like
we
our-
find out. Yeah, so,
Some other things.
okay,
So I will work with the three of you on next steps for that. I probably won't reach out until later in December, and then I'll work with Nick also on scheduling.
Sounds good.
administrative update.
Thank you. I have 4 updates and then I'll see if Whitney and Eric have any other additional updates. The first is, I hope some of you saw the news this week that we have hired a new health services director, Holly Harris. She had been serving in the interim capacity for a number of months. Prior to that, she was our behavioral health director for almost 3 years. She joined the county in 2013. So that's a huge hire for us. Very, very pleased to make that announcement. She is fantastic. She'll just do so incredibly well in this new capacity for all of us. So that's that press release it's out now. I'm not sure if I've seen it beyond maybe my own inbox, but I hope it's out there. Number 2, we are in the process of hiring a new Fair and Expo director. This morning, Eric Whitney and I and a couple of Fair Board members conducted interviews of 13. Is that how many candidates this morning? And then we've got some more next week. Really great candidates. And we're so pleased. We're in such a great
How many more
position.
next week?
Good question. How many more next week?
We had 61 applicants.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 13 so far, and
Another 8 that need to be scored, and then the recruitment closes this Sunday.
But it hasn't closed yet. So if you want a job,
Today at 11:59 p.m. or some
fabulous opportunity.
it is. Yeah.
Sounds like you have a lot of,
another
Yeah.
virtual interviews to determine who to invite for in-person interviews, which will be October 28th. Patty, I know we need to figure out how to get you involved since that day does not work for you now, but we'll work with you.
And Commissioner Dare is not alone. I'm not here either. So we'll figure out a day.
You're in Florida and I'm in Salem, so
So we'll figure out a time to connect with
not like I don't care about the fair.
a finalist or a couple finalists. I know your input is incredibly important.
Well,
So we
no.
will
It's my
make
guess.
sure you are engaged in that. That's my second update. Third is that we have a vacancy on our county budget committee. I think we've just initiated that press release. I'm seeing yes is over.
It
Good.
is
So
out.
that's out.
Uh-huh.
Position closes at the end of the month. 27th, a couple of weeks, just over a couple of weeks. So anybody who's interested in applying to serve on the county budget committee, it's a volunteer position. They meet a couple of times a year, and then really the
Don't
key-
forget the lunches they get.
they get
Fabulous
lunches,
food.
and the real key is about 3 or 4 full days in May, but it's a really important process. So,
Is it?
Like full days.
yeah. full days.
Selling it there.
Well, no,
Yeah.
it used to be a lot longer. It's actually not as long now, so. And it is the week before Memorial Day, so we don't ruin your weekend where we start. So, I mean, I thought that was a really nice switch.
Great, good. And then my 4th update is just to provide a quick update on the District Mapping Advisory Committee. So as you're all aware, the Board of Commissioners is expanding from 3 members to 5 members by the voters. The board has directed us to create this District Mapping Advisory Committee, 7 volunteer members that the board appointed. They're meeting now, and they hope to have a recommendation of district map that goes to the Board of County Commissioners. So that's really step 1 before Thanksgiving. Then between about early December and early February, the board will review that map and then decide if they're going to refer that map to the voters. So which is step 3, which is then the May ballot. So kind of the 3-step process that we're engaged in right now. And I just wanted to give you that update. It's an important issue that we're all focused on. And I just want to make sure see if Eric or Whitney have any other administrative updates. And then we're also available to answer any questions.
The process is just curious, in May, they'll establish the districts, and then November, that's when the vote is.
No,
No,
So the ballot measure would be on the May ballot,
okay.
along with 4 commissioners.
hopefully
along with-
we'll make it to get it on the May ballot. That's our
That's our
goal.
goal.
So that's
That is our goal.
That's been the 4 commissioners.
And then, but they have to vote for it. the public has to vote for the district's maps.
And if they approve it, it would go into effect in 2028
Yes,
for that election
for
cycle.
those races.
Yeah, what if I don't have,
Yeah.
what happens if they don't approve it?
Then it
Then we go
would
get
be a free for all. It won't be like LA County.
All at large.
Yeah.
It'll be.
That's next May.
Ben will be in
That's
charge.
next vote.
Commissioners on the ballot, next May, those, they will all be on.
Be at large.
Yes. I do.
See,
It's a very, very big May ballot. Board commissioners, because we have had the transition in the sheriff will be on the ballot. Clerk, treasurer.
Won't the sheriff's race
assessor,
though depend on how many people are running, Nick? Isn't it that if there are two,
Thank you,
yes,
you're
if
right.
there are two, it will be in November, and if it's three, we'll have it in May. And then if somebody gets 50% in May, then they will actually be elected, but not assume responsibility until January. Is that right?
They would
Steve?
still be on the ballot in November, as they're technically elected, sheriff's elected in November.
somebody doesn't get 50% of runoff or.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, so of the county positions, all but one commissioner and justice of the peace, everything, all other county elected positions are on the ballot.
Big year.
Yeah, next year, yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be.
Exciting.
Can't wait for the heads.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Any other items to bring up before we?
So our next meeting will be December 12th then? Is that correct?
It's 12.
Okay.
Well, December 12th.
And I'm hoping that'll be the joint meeting with the Board of County Commissioners and hopefully also our external auditors will be done by then.
Okay. Very efficient.
Thanks, everyone. I guess that.
Hey, Joe, thank you.
No, Daryl, you're missed. Don't know where the.